Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? I am Piglet here once again, and I'm back for some more yet again for the likes of the Mugsy Toys videos. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to more Let's Play of Toy Story 2, in this case as a subtitle, Buzz Lightyear to the Rescue for the PlayStation, Sega Dreamcast, Nintendo 64, PC, and a 2D side-scrolling platformer for the Game Boy Color. So, last time we have managed to able to explore through 3 levels from last time because we've already collected ourselves 3 Pizza Planet tokens in Alleys and Galleys, and also we managed to beat the likes of the next boss, which is not on this level by the way. It was actually on Slime Time because, well, we need to get that specific upgrade, or that power up I should say, until we're able to continue things on. And also we managed to explore through Al's Toy Barn despite the fact that we only got about 4 Pizza Planet tokens until whenever we get ourselves the final upgrade, or the final power-up I should say. But even then, I'll mention more on that in the future though, and also we beat the likes of the next boss on that as well, which appears to be the dinosaur itself. So today for this episode is the fact that we're going to be moving on to the forms of the next level in this game, which appears to be Al's Toy Barn Part 2, or in this case, Al's Spaceland. So, you know, it's going to be a lot of those familiar space kind of pop cultures or something like that. I have no idea why I'm truly saying like this at this point right now, just because of how the fact that, well, if you couldn't tell already, because I was going to able to actually do this as the second attempt or the first attempt on, well, the actual footage just seems to be pretty good, but as far as commentary goes, it was actually my second attempt, because I keep on stuttering around like an idiot and all that stuff, but, hopefully by that time though, we could able to actually make this a little bit better than before. So, you know, you get the idea. So if we come towards over here, while there's going to be covered in the actual cardboard boxes, we actually come across into another new boss, which appears to be Buzz Lightyear Buggy, which used to be actual, because you remember in the movie where basically Buzz Lightyear, the Andes version of Buzz, managed to come across into himself the actual doppelganger of himself, but the major differences between the two is that the actual other Buzz actually got himself the actual Unity belt, which, gotta think about it, it's actually pretty cool whenever I first time I seen that, since when I managed to watch that all the time on the VHS tape. And as a result of this kind of stuff though, that I still even like enjoy that today. Even especially noticeable because of, the celebration for Toy Story 4's release. So, but you get the idea. So basically in this entire fight, this is where the boss fights might get significantly harder as you progress through each time. Now as you can see, on Buzz Lightyear Buggy is the fact that obviously we need to, keep on shooting lasers at him. So even then though, but here's the thing, he constantly shoots out the actual homing missiles from time to time. Then, as a result of this kind of stuff though, if you manage to try to, hopefully God forbid, try to aim on him and destroy the actual Buggy for a long period of time, then you would get yourselves of course, the Pizza Planet token. So even then, we'll grab that, and let's keep on playing. And, eventually at this point is the fact that as soon as we move on to the next couple of stages, is that I think we might actually guarantee we can able to actually gather every single of those Pizza Planet tokens all in one, particular run, compared to the forms of those 2 levels so far, which apparently is the forms of Alleys and Galleys, because we need to grab that specific power-up until later on down in the forms of the entire game. And especially noticeable with Al's Toy Barn that we do need to get ourselves the final power-up in the game, which we'll definitely point that out whenever we come across into it. So, but you get the idea. So yeah, today's day is the forms of the 22nd of November in 2019, according to the actual time length for the actual uploading schedules and all that stuff. Recently, about the fact that Frozen 2, the actual film of the actual new Disney film that usually comes out, it did, recently released today on the big screen. So even then, I was really looking forward to able to see it on day 1, and sadly to tell you, I was gonna able to see it on day 1, and just like the forms of the first Frozen film back in 2013, I did get a chance to able to actually see it on day 1. I'm well hoping we can able to see that in the future, but as far as what I've noticed is that the actual reviews of Frozen 2 has actually gone pretty darn good. Like, I will say that it is actually doing pretty good as to be expected. So even then, way more better than any other Disney direct-to-video sequels for that matter though, because obviously the graphics themselves are pretty much, you know, left intact in comparison to the original films, of course. You know, kind of like in other films too, like for instance the films of the Toy Story film Saga, as well as the films of well, let's just say in Ralph Breaks the Internet, because obviously the visuals do look exactly the same as the original film, and also, well, recently for Frozen 1 and Frozen 2. Although, despite the fact that, well, there are going to be some of those missing characters or some brief references or cameos or something like that, I really don't freaking know, just because we haven't exactly watched the actual film yet. So, and unfortunately though, similar to the forms of how it does it on Toy Story 4 recently, is the fact that the actual storybook of, you know, Frozen 2 just came out with the actual storybook, you know, the actual merchandise or something like that. Unfortunately, once again, it did manage to able to spoil the ending though, which, to me, I'm just gonna ignore that because, well, since I've seen the first film before, and I haven't get a chance to see the sequel yet. So even then though, I'm really looking forward to able to watch that, I suppose. So even then though, that makes it a little bit obvious for that little sense of, for that regard. You can also just manage to defeat those guys, as you can see by the actual standpoints. We utilize the actual spin attack while simply able to keep on hitting the actual Zurg's guards of any sorts. So even then though, you can probably guarantee by that. So, one thing I've totally forgot to mention about this ever since during the forms of Wednesdays or something like that, recently about the fact that, sadly to tell you, is that much like the forms of how it does it on My Little Pony Rainbow Road Trip DVD in the UK, unfortunately though is the fact that Mega Man 0/ZX Legacy Collection on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch, and I believe Steam versions as well. Unfortunately, that particular compilation will be delayed until about a month later, which even then, this time is going to be releasing on February instead of January. So, kind of annoying though, but I can usually just manage to take some time before I'm able to actually get myself enough money so that I can able to actually just download that on my PlayStation 4 system. So, and as you can see right there, we're actually going to be having ourselves a race once again, as you can see right there. But except this time around though, there's only one lap, and especially noticeable is quite linear in comparison to the forms of how it does in the RC car racing missions, because all we need to do here is just the fact that we need to go from zip line to zip line, and then when you reach to the finish line before the actual UFO thing gets there first, well, you pretty much guarantee you can get yourselves a Pizza Planet token. So, might be pretty tricky though, especially you need to get your good eye on with the forms of the actual timing jumps or what have you, because if you somehow mess up your jumps sometimes, then at least you can able to try this again, at least if you manage to able to go off screen or something. But before you're able to actually continue with that stuff, let me just go ahead and just deliver 50 coins to Ham again, so that way we can get ourselves, of course, the next Pizza Planet token. So even then, that's the third of them so far. So I believe we're now going to be moving on to the final two missions in this stage, which it used to be by the forms of, well, obviously we need to gather every single aliens, as well as the forms of the actual puzzle challenge, which even then might not be very complicated though, I will admit though, but either way though, let's just hit on to the forms of the arcade cabinet, so that way we can able to actually come across into this arcade machines, including the actual ball of pool, and also the forms of the crane game. So even then, hopefully we can guarantee by this point is that, well, hopefully by that time we can able to actually, you know, as I said this before already, that we might actually gather every single of those Pizza Planet tokens all in one particular level. So that could be also same applies for the future levels here and there as well, but even then, we'll point things out whenever we get to it. So, of course, we need to take down this one of those enemies first. So, another thing's worth mentioning though is the fact that, what was I gonna say right here? Oh yeah, by the forms of, actually I really don't know, to be honest with you, because either way, I do apologize with the actual news and announcements, kind of like, lacking so far, just because of how the fact that, well, at this point in time, that we might actually get ourselves a new Nintendo Direct during the new forms of early, next year. I think it's probably pretty obvious, because even then, well, despite the fact that with the, some little bit of announcements of some Mario titles here and there though, well, apart from the fact that with, we actually got about 5 Mario games have been released for this year, such as like, you know, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, Yoshi's Crafted World, and Super Mario Maker 2, Luigi's Mansion 3, and of course Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. So as far as everything else though, Mario Party doesn't seem to able to release on this specific year so far. I think it's pretty obvious because I think they did technically got themselves you know, Disney Tansen Festival, which is more accurately Mario Party, but just with Disney characters with their cutie, you know, visuals and stuff like that. And, also, if you really noticed by this point, is the fact that, well, I think most of the toys already mentioned about this before, about the fact that in that particular game that we talked about, it does manage to once again requires a singular Joy-Con to able to actually play the game completely, just like the forms of how it does on Super Mario Party and stuff. So even then, because otherwise though, you're pretty much going to be stuck in with the handheld mode, and you can able to play a puzzle game entirely. So as you can see right there, we managed to able to completely done with every single missions in the forms of our Space Land. So it's a pretty cool level in theory, just because it's that one particular moment in the film where basically Buzz Lightyear managed to able to keep on searching for Woody on the actual Owl's toy barn. Then as soon as he walks past the actual whole balancing of Buzz Lightyears on the actual display, then you do manage to able to come across into that particular Buzz Lightyear that has like a Unity belt on it. So, pretty cool though, and I think this might be the only time that you're able to see, well, in the film anyway though, this is the only film that only features 2 Buzz Lightyears all in one particular image, or the actual screen itself. So, I just want to point things out right away. But anyways, now let's move on to the 9th level, and it appears to be the next main boss in the entire game, which appears to be, excuse me, Toy Barn Encounter, which basically, you know, with the actual laser kind of enemies as you can see right there, well, turns out we need to face off against with a huge version of himself. And the major difference is now is the fact that every time you deal the damage on the actual the boss itself, basically you're able to actually unleash most of the enemies during the actual capsule parts. So yeah, I think you have to do that 6 times though until you're able to actually deal with the final blow to this boss. So even though you can't really do the actual spin attack on him, unfortunately though. But hey, at least on the upside though is the fact that, well, I think this boss fight might be pretty easy in comparison to the forms of Slime Time. Just because, well, although I will admit though right away, is the fact that I'm really not a big fan of how the fact that every time, whenever you're trying to charge up your laser beam, and then just trying to able to deal the damage on any enemy, or any bosses for that matter, sometimes you're able to actually cancel out the actual charging beam, and then as a result you have to able to press it again and to able to recognize the actual move. Because yeah, I'm holding down the square button if you couldn't tell, and then sometimes I'll have to let go of the square button and press it again. So that way I can able to actually charge my laser. So yeah, for that line right there is actually based off from when the Unity Belt Buzz version, I should say, and alongside with his friends, did manage to come across into Al whenever he was on the office or something, and then he did actually say about the actual, like, a kidnapper, and then he was like, the agent of Zurich and Everson. And then that's what the actual line is actually based off from. So, while Steve forms the Andes version of Buzz Lightyear has managed to got trapped inside, and in one of those little packagings and all that stuff, so I just want to point things out. So, I think this, you know, the actual quote is actually say that every time whenever you're trying to let those enemies come out of the actual capsule. So even then, it's not too noticeable and not too annoying either, because even then, that most of the actual voice clips comes from the forms of, I would say, Tim Allen himself or something like that, whilst compared to the forms of Toy Story 3, the video game, as well as, you know, the most recent game, Kingdom Hearts 3, during the forms of the Toy Box world, that he's been completely in a different voice alongside with Woody himself. So, you probably get the idea for that solution here. So even then, let's go ahead and deal out with the last enemies capsule here, and then we can hopefully try to deal with the last final blow to the forms of this boss itself. So even then, I do apologize with the actual commentary for the sake of this point, guys, because, well, there's not much else to really talk about this at this point, unfortunately, because, well, you know how it is. If I was going to be expected to able to discuss on something new, but it turns out we're pretty much running out of ideas to able to discuss upon ourselves. So, Anyway, so let's save our game here, and plus, if you can tell with the actual time of this particular video, it's actually pretty short though in comparison to the previous part so far. But don't worry though, we'll get to the longer amount of videos at this point in time throughout the future. So anyways, another bonus movie rewarded. And basically it shows us when Al was pretty excited to able to, well, experience the actual Japan. So even then, because I'll talk more about it whenever we get to the next coming, well, in this case, the next upcoming levels, I should say. So even then, though, I just want to classify for stuffing, so even then, though, that way we can get ourselves a little bit more of a discussions to make. So, yeah, I guess I'll pretty much go to say this right now. We got the endings off at this point right there, I'm afraid, guys. So join me next time on Let's Play Toy Story 2. It's the fact that we're going to be taking on the forms of the next level, which appears to be Elevator Hop. And eventually we might as well come back into Alleys and Galleys for something important. So see you guys then. Later, fellas.